All right, we good over there? Sweet. Well, welcome to confirmation, everybody. It's good to see y'all. Most of you I haven't seen before, but welcome. I'm Pastor Nate, for those of you who haven't met me yet, and I'm excited to be hanging out with you tonight and to be working on confirmation. And of course, welcome to all of you who are viewing this online. We are glad that you are here too. As we get started today, can anyone tell me, what did we talk about last week? What is anything that you remember from what you learned about last week? There's like 12 of you here. Somebody's going to have to jump in. What do you guys think? What is one thing you learned about last week? All right, y'all, I'm going to have to give you guys the same speech I gave the last crew. When I teach, it is not presentation, it is discussion. It's conversation. So if you don't respond to me, this is going to be awful and painful. If you answer me, then this will go a whole lot quicker. And frankly, I don't care if you're wrong. That's my big thing. You can be wrong all day, and it's just fine. A wrong answer is better than no answer. So that's kind of where I'm at. So talk to me. Right? Don't worry about being wrong. Don't worry about anything like that. Just, if you answer my question, we'll be able to get going pretty quick, right? And not make this painful and awful. Because does anyone want this experience to be painful and awful? Anyone? I didn't think so. All right, so let's try this again. Can anyone tell me anything that you've learned about this year? Anything that you have learned about at all this entire year? Y'all, I'll wait. You're going to have to talk at some point. I'll start calling on people if I need to. All right, we'll do it this way. You in the Adidas shirt in the back. What's your name? Tanner. Tanner, tell me one thing you remember talking about at all this entire confirmation year. A family tree. You did something about a family tree, right? Okay, sweet. What's another thing that you've talked about this anytime this whole year? What do you got? Can I give you an easy one? It starts with a J and ends with an Eezus. Jesus, you've talked about Jesus, right? Anybody remember talking about Jesus? Yes. Okay, now we're making progress. Can anyone tell me anything else that we've talked about? What do you got? Lent and Palm Sunday, right? Good stuff. What about you? The 10 Commandments. Can anyone name any of the 10 Commandments? Just give me one of them, one random 10 Commandment. Don't murder, right? That's a solid one to remember. Honestly, if you're going to remember one of them, that might be the one to remember, right? It'll keep you out of a lot of trouble. All right. Anything else that you remember from this entire year? Anything at all? Top Golf in the corner. What do you remember? The family tree? All right, what's up with the family tree? What was that discussion about? Did you make your own family tree, or did you talk about one from the Bible? You made your own? Okay, sweet. Sweet. All right, one more thing. Tell me one more thing that you all have talked about or you remember from this year. The miracles he did. Can anyone tell me of any miracle that Jesus did? Anything? He walked on water. That's pretty sweet. Any of y'all wanted to ever walk on water? Have you ever tried it? It doesn't work, does it? No. All right, how about you? What do you remember? He healed people, right? That's pretty sweet. Okay, now last week we had this whole recap where we talked about Jesus as the Son of God, right? We talked about Jesus' identity, who he really was. And we talked actually a little bit, if you guys could see online, that we talked about who you are, what your identity is. What are the things that define who you are in the world, right? So we did that a little bit, and then we talked about who Jesus is. Exactly. So I'm going to give you the short little recap video. So I want everyone put your clipboard down. All the way down. Sweet. All right. So pay attention, because I'm going to ask you one thing from this part of the video that jumps out at you. Whether or not you remembered it from before, but one thing that interests you, that piqued your interest, anything like that. If it'll play. There we go.
People wondered who Jesus was. "What about you?" Jesus asked. "Who do you say that I am?" Jesus' follower Peter spoke up. "You are the Messiah." 6 days later, Jesus took Peter and 2 of the other disciples high up on a mountain. When they got to the top, Jesus' appearance suddenly changed. 2 men appeared next to him. They were Moses and Elijah. The disciples fell down terrified. When they got up and opened their eyes, only Jesus remained. Soon it was time to go back again to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When he did, huge crowds gathered along the streets, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord!" But it didn't take long before he began clashing with the religious leaders again. So the leaders began devising a plan to get Jesus arrested. They met with Judas, who agreed to turn Jesus in to the authorities. The religious leaders waited for the right opportunity to arrest him.
All right, that was short. Who remembers anything, or what jumped out at you from that? What do you got? He's going to get arrested, right? That doesn't sound like fun. Okay. What else? What jumped out at you from that? There's a question right at the beginning that I think was crucial to our discussion last week. And the question was, who do you say that I am? Right? Now, imagine if you ask that question to somebody else. Who do you say that I am? Who do you think I am? I want you to take a second and think about how you are perceived in the world. Right? What would people say about who you actually are? Not what you do. Again, like we talked about last week, this isn't about I'm a hockey player, or I'm a baseball player, or I'm a dancer, or I am good at video games. That's not what we're talking about. Would anyone say you're kind, you're helpful, you're thoughtful, you're loyal, right? Those are character pieces about you. And I want you to think very carefully about what those are, what people would say about you. Because as a Christian, that should affect who you are, your true identity. It should make you a person of character. It should make you kind and helpful and all of those sorts of things. So I think our identity is something that's really important for us to always pay attention to. And it's important for us to know about the identity of Jesus as well. I just threw that on the floor. It's all good. All right, so on to this week. Now, here's my question. So I want you to pick up your papers and find the back side of any sheet as long as it's blank. You just need a little bit of writing space. Those of you who are online, whatever handouts you've got, flip it over so you've got a blank sheet of paper in front of you. And I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to just jot down your answers to this. It's not anything I'm going to read. It's not anything anybody else is going to see. Okay? But you do need some answers down because we're going to talk about them a little bit. You can bullet point, you can do sentences, you can do whatever you want on there to get your answer down. The question is this. If you were to write down the story of your life, okay? You're going to write a book that has the story of your life. Now, in that book, are you going to be able to include every single meal that you've ever eaten, every time you've gone to the bathroom, how late you slept every single day? Are you going to include all of that? No. What are you going to include in that? The little pieces, right? You're going to pick the things that are important, right? You're going to pick the important stories and you're going to include those. Because who's going to want to read a book about the number of times you've eaten macaroni and cheese? Does anyone actually care about that? No, but they're going to want to know the important parts of your life, the important stories. So, if you were to have the story of your life written down, what are the major events? What are the events that would be in that book? What are the major stories that would appear in that book? You got it? I'm going to give you a couple minutes to write. Ready, set, I'll tell you when you're done, go. All right, got about another minute, minute and a half, something like that. Okay, got about 30 seconds left. Again, this is not for anybody else to read, but this is for you to be able to think and to talk about. These are your little notes for this discussion. If you're online, I hope you guys are doing this too. This is an important thing that you're going to be able to reflect on, maybe in your small groups as well. So, you got about 10 seconds left, so finish up your last thought. All right, so anybody here want to tell me one of your, I don't need the full story, we don't have time for that, but give me the one sentence summary of one of the stories that you wrote down. What do you got? The day you were born, probably an important one for the book, right? Good, all right, what's another one? What's another quick version of the story? What do you got? Your family vacations, right? Those are important. Good. What do you got? When you had surgery, right? Some of the trials that you've gone through. That's important. What do you got? When you started piano lessons, right? Cool. Very cool. What else? What do you got? School? Awesome. Okay. What else? Give me one more. Somebody else. What do you got? The sport you play, right? Maybe stories of a big game that you played in or whatever, right? If I think about my story, probably school that I've gone to when I became a pastor, some of the trips that I've gone on, stories of my family, all of those sorts of things, right? How did you decide what stories went in and what stories stayed out? How did you decide what was in and what was out? Obviously, you put the important ones in, right? So how did you figure out what was important and what wasn't? Whatever had an effect on your life, right? Exactly. So you think about you and who you are, and you think about your history, and you think about what events in your history helped to make you into the person that you are today, right? Is that kind of the thought process any of y'all went through for this? Yeah, that's usually the way that we go about this. So the important stories that help to shape our identity are the ones that go in the book. Make sense? Funny thing, tonight we're actually going to be talking about the big story in the book. Right? Now, as you guys started to write down this thing, as I asked you this question, how many of you knew exactly the first story that you were going to write down? The most important one usually is on the list first, right? Exactly. You know what the most crucial story for you to get down in the book was. Tonight, we're going to talk about that in the Bible, the most crucial story in the Bible. Now, we're not going to finish the story tonight, but we're going to start the really, really important piece. Now, that's not to say that the rest of the Bible isn't important, right? All of the stories that would have gone in your book are important, right? But they might not be the most important. Tonight we're going to talk about the night that Jesus is arrested, right? We talked about that. Somebody raised that up, that Jesus was going to be arrested. Okay, we're going to talk about that time, the Last Supper, when he gets arrested, and on into when he dies on the cross. This story is the most important. It's of the utmost importance. And obviously there's an end to the story that we're not going to get to tonight. That comes next week, right? But this is important. And it's important because it has the biggest effect on who we are as followers of Jesus. Okay? So I'm going to play this little video for you so you kind of get the visual version of this. So pay attention for this one.
Jesus was celebrating the Passover at a meal with his disciples. As they were eating, Jesus took bread and wine from the table and said, "This is my body, this is my blood, poured out for the forgiveness of sins." After the meal, Jesus and his disciples went into a nearby garden to pray. The disciples fell asleep, but Jesus continued to pray, emotionally, asking God for some way out of what was about to happen, but saying that it was ultimately up to God. Just as he finished, a large crowd with swords and clubs, led by Jesus' disciple Judas, came and arrested Jesus. Another one of his disciples, Peter, tried to defend Jesus. He took out his sword and cut off the ear of one of the high priest's servants. But Jesus told him to put away his sword and reached out and touched the man's ear and healed him. Jesus was led away, beaten and spit on by those who arrested him, and he was taken to the Roman governor Pilate. Pilate told the crowd that he could find no real charges to bring against Jesus. But the crowd screamed out, "Crucify him," demanding that Jesus be executed. So Pilate handed Jesus over to be killed. When Judas saw that Jesus was going to be killed, he was filled with regret and sadness for betraying him. So he went back to the Jewish leaders, gave them their bribe money, and went out into a field and hanged himself. Jesus was crucified, nailed by his hands and feet to a wooden cross. Then, even though it was only noon, the sun stopped shining, and darkness came over the whole land. Hanging from the cross, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Someone nearby then gave Jesus a drink by filling a sponge and lifting it up to Jesus on a long stick. After Jesus took a drink, he said, "It is finished," and died. At that moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook. When the guards and the others around Jesus saw the earthquake and all that happened, they were terrified, saying, "Surely he was the Son of God."
All right. Now, this, of course, is a familiar story for you, hopefully. Any of you heard this story before? Oh, good. All right. Why is this important? Can anyone tell me why this matters? You're going to dig into this in your groups tonight, but tell me why this matters. What do you think? Yeah, right, your sins are forgiven. Okay, that's huge. How many of y'all are perfect? Anyone perfect in the room? Kari's perfect. Other than that, right? None of us are perfect. We all mess up, right? How many of you have ever messed up and you get that feeling in your chest that like feels like you're sinking a little bit and you just feel terrible? Anyone had that before? Yeah, right? It feels awful. And the guilt that comes with that can affect you for the rest of your life if you let it. Right? If you really mess up, that feeling of guilt, that feeling of sorrow, that feeling of sadness, that all can weigh you down and wreck so much in your life. What this means, at least on one level, is you can let that go. You don't have to feel weighed down by that. You don't have to feel the guilt anymore, knowing that Jesus died for you to let all of that go from you. To know that God doesn't count that screw up against you. And so you can just let it go. You can live free, knowing that you and God are okay with each other. Any of y'all ever been in a fight with a friend? What does it feel like when that fight is over and you're finally back, like hanging out with your friend? It feels really good, right? Yeah. That reconciliation, that's what this is about. Knowing that when you mess up, God looks at you and says, I love you and it's okay. We're okay. And you get to move on. That's what you're going to talk about tonight. But I wanted to be very clear as to one way that this really actually matters in your life. So I'm gonna stop there. I'll let Julie come up and give you the marching orders. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Oh yeah, and all you online, thanks for joining us. Y'all can sign out and do your thing. See y'all later.